Thank you guys for joining in once again. I do appreciate it. We're gonna kind of go ahead and continue what we've been talking about. Like I said in the last training, in the last few, I should say, we have been in a chronological order as far as the process goes of representing a buyer and or seller, which means we talked about the marketing, going out there, how to follow up. We've talked about the conversation, even what you should be wearing or could be wearing as or present yourself, how you should present yourself. We've talked about these different things, and now we're going into, once you've already done that bit of work, you start to see the fruit of your labor essentially, and you kind of start getting clients, start sitting down with them and actually coming to an agreement that you're going to be representing them, listing their house, or helping them buy a house. But it's not as simple as just, hey, I'm going to help you buy a house, or hey, I'm going to list your house. Obviously, you have to have a contract, which we've talked about in the past, but we're going to actually get into what those contracts are, what documentation you need when representing a client. Do understand this is a very, very important key part of the process, especially with the recent changes that the NAR settlement has brung. Making sure those forms are filled out, signed, and agreed right at the beginning of the process is important. Those dates are important. A lot of times, people think, well, I'll get that later. I'll get that so I can receive my check. But the reality is you definitely want to make sure you have those documents up front because that is an agreement, a legally binding agreement, which title companies could ask for, loan officers could ask for, and even the client could ask for a copy of it just to make sure that uh, what they agreed upon is what they're getting, what type of representation, your duties, their duties, and so on and so forth. And sometimes, and hopefully you don't have that issue, but you may find a seller or the other party using that against you if you don't have those forms signed, such as a builder, for example, if we're going to new construction buildings or communities. They might say, hey, you never had an agreement. There's no agreement showing that you had a contract with this client. Therefore, you don't represent them. We can't pay you. We can't have you being part of this process or whatever the case may be. Which, of course, especially if we've been dealing with that client, is just not going to be a good day for us. So before we get into that, does everybody understand, kind of what we've been doing with these last trainings in the past and where we are today, or any questions that may have come up from those past trainings? No questions. All right. No problem. So, what I'm gonna do is gonna show you guys all this stuff, uh, kind of from the very beginning, kind of really start, the very, very beginning so you guys know where to navigate, how to go find these documentations. So you guys should have access to the Stellar MLS, or if you're in a different place, you might have Beach MLS or a different type of uh, what is this thing called? Association, where you have your MLS. Pretty much when you go on the MLS, I'm gonna do it from the products and services just because over here is where you customize it. And we've talked about that and we will do another training on that to customize this. But we're gonna go to products and services. That's the first place we're gonna go. It's produce, seller products. All right, so coming in here, if you go down, you're gonna go to transaction desk. If you guys are not familiar with transaction desk, this is where you're gonna find a lot of your forms, whether it's your contract forms when you're sending the offers, whether it's your representation form, listing forms, compensation agreements, all that stuff, it's gonna be in transaction desk. This is where you would find it. You could also search it over here. The logo has changed a few times over the last few years, but the name has stayed the same. But it is Transaction Desk. Once you click on it, it'll actually bring you here to the, let me actually go straight to the home page of Transaction Desk. Cool. So it'll bring you here. You may or may not have transactions already in here, but let's assume you haven't actually started a transaction with a property. Okay, we're going to talk about starting it from scratch with a person, just their name. Let's say it's a listing, then you might have a property. But if it is a buyer, then you're not going to have anything yet. So to do that, you would pretty much come over here on the right, on the left side and click transactions. And then you would click add over here. Once you click add, you can put whatever name that you feel is easiest for you to remember this transaction. If it is a buyer, you might put their name. If it is a seller, you might put their information, such as their address or something that helps you remember that transaction. For the purpose of the training, I'm just going to put training, type, sell, and go ahead and make sure that's me as the selling agent. We're going to create. So as you can see, there's no information filled out yet. This is completely blank. Nothing is in here. I can go ahead and click next. Gonna click that a few times until we get to forms. There we go. So step 4, you go to forms. When you click add, you can go ahead and add those forms that we need. So number 1, we're gonna need that representation. So that exclusive buyer brokerage agreement. So we have the exclusive buyer brokerage agreement. You have different relationships. Like I said, you may have certain clients who want to know exactly what relationship they have with you. So you want to make sure you're doing the right one so that they know what kind of representation, what kind of duties you owe them. The most common one is going to probably be your transaction broker, which is down here. Do be mindful. There is two variations of, or there are two forms that say transaction broker, but be mindful of which one you're choosing. This one over here says consent to transition. You're not transitioning from it if you aren't, if this is your first time getting into an agreement, you're probably going to be starting off with this. So you want to make sure you're clicking the correct one, which is transaction broker, exclusive buyer brokerage agreement, and not the consent to transition. So we're going to click that one. And now we have it added in our forms. Okay. Uh, Open that up. So I do advise everybody when you have time to go through this whole entire form here, really look at it, understand it, because not only is it going to be good for your knowledge, but if anybody has questions, if any client of yours has questions, they will know exactly, or you will know exactly how to answer those questions based off of this form. For the most part, it is self-explanatory, especially for us who have more knowledge with some of these terms and things like this. But the consumer, of course, is going to be our client. So we're going to say John Doe is going to be our client. And then the agreement. This is going to be an important one as well. Like I said, you want to make sure from the very beginning that you have this signed. So if I sit with a client today, I want to make sure I get this thing signed today or my representation starts today. That way, if I show them a house later on today, if I show them a house tomorrow, if I get under contract with them Sunday, whatever the case may be, it is after we've got this agreement, okay? If it is dated after you have an agreement, then you can't do that. You're not even supposed to be showing houses without this form or without this document being signed and filled out. Uh, Most common you might find as far as representation goes is about 6 months. You might see some that are more, you might see some that are less. And at the end of the day, it could be terminated by the buyer or yourself as well. But we're just going to go ahead and put, we're just going to go ahead and put December here, 5th. Okay, type of property. Depending on the client, you will know more information when you sit down and have a conversation with them, what kind of property they're looking for. But you may not limit yourself. You may go ahead and just put single family residence, which is the SFR, or you can spell it out if you'd like. Multifamily, townhomes, duplex, whatever you feel is necessary. And then, of course, location, the easiest is just put the state of Florida, especially if the client doesn't know exactly where they're going to be. Um, you don't want to put a specific address or a specific uh, area just because, like I said, this is a legally binding contract, right? And exactly as it's written in here is exactly if worst case scenario, this were in front of an attorney, for example, they're going to go exactly based off of this legally binding contract. So if I say I'm representing this client in Orlando, Florida, and later on they say, hey, you weren't representing me in Kissimmee, according to this contract, if I put Orlando, Florida, they are in the right. They are correct. I only represented him in Kissimmee. So try to make sure you put that, the way you want it to do it. So if you put Florida, then the whole entire state counts, of course, any city within it. Over here, you have all the explanation of your duties and what this contract means, what you're allowed to do, what the consumer is allowed to do, fair housing, and so on and so forth. Like I said, you guys should go through this, look at it, read it, understand it. I'm not going to go and break down this whole entire contract as to what it means. However, do be mindful for you to go ahead and understand it and you go over it. Each page has an initial for you and the buyer to go ahead and initial. And then, of course, the broker as well can. Coming down here, you have your retainer fee. Not every deal will have a retainer. It's up to you if you want to have a retainer. Make sure you understand the rules behind it. So I'll just read this quickly. A non-refundable retainer fee of blank for broker services provided for the consumer is earned and payable upon execution of this agreement. This retainer is in addition to any compensation earned by broker. Broker and consumer agree this retainer is for the real estate services described herein and does not constitute a fee paid for a rental information list as described in Section 475 Florida statutes. Basically, this is an upfront fee not related to the compensation, not related to if you find them a property, if you don't find them a property. It is specifically for you to do your services, which is represent them starting from this agreement date, sending them homes, showing them homes, whatever the case may be. That's what it is. And of course, it's non-refundable. Compensation, this is going to be a big one. I'm going to actually read this one as well because a lot of us, since this is a little bit newer, don't understand the wording in this. So the compensation, as it says, is broker's compensation is earned when, during the term of this agreement, or any renewal or extension, consumer or any person acting for on behalf of consumer contracts to acquire real property as specified in this agreement or defaults on any contract to acquire property. This compensation is for broker services for consumer. Compensation received by broker, if any, from an owner or owner's broker for services rendered to consumer will reduce any amount owed by consumer per this paragraph. Period. Let me try to simplify all that real quick. The compensation is to be paid by the buyer for the services that you provide to them. However, if the other party is paying you for your services, this is to be reduced from the agreed upon amount in this paragraph. Example, if over here I say the agreed upon amount is 3%, right? If the seller is giving 2.5%, based off of this contract, the borrower or the consumer, the client that you're representing, they owe you that 0.5%. Any questions there? Because this is important, like I said, this is something that is the wording is new. Some people don't understand it still. Some people do understand it. Some people interpret it differently. Want to make sure everybody's on the same page here.
It is that mean they split the payment?
It is the amount you agreed upon
Mm-hmm.
minus whatever is paid from the other party. So if the seller is paying a compensation or a commission to you,
Mhm.
this 3% is minus that.
Okay, the other party will pay the.
So yeah, so if they were paying 3%, your
Mhm.
buyer doesn't owe you anything. If
Okay.
they're paying 2%, your buyer owes you 1%.
Mhm.
Okay. That's what this form is, or this paragraph right here, that's what it's saying basically. So, uh, of course, that also would be the same for any uh, dollar amount if you put, right? So if you say X amount of dollars plus amount, there's different ways you could set it up pretty much here, or even in a lease agreement, things like this. That's how you would put it. Additional fees as well. If you have any additional fees, you would put it in there. But you want to make sure that's the biggest part right there. It is minus this. Remember this because there's another form we're going to go over that has a lot to do with this part specifically.
So it's safe to say the assumption of the commission is not here anymore, and we have to basically negotiate and put in hard copy.
Yes, you definitely have to negotiate your commission. You're going to have to come to an agreement with the sellers. However, this says you're going to be paid by the buyer. Some buyers are a little bit more knowledgeable. They'll ask you questions in regards to this. If they're seeing it on news, social media, whatever the case may be, they'll ask you about it. And you have to explain this part to them, which is why I'm emphasizing it. So you're able to explain it to them. Hey, this is our agreed upon amount. If they pay me X amount, then you only owe me X amount.
Got it. So as you as an agent, if you willing to do, if you want 3%, and the seller saying, "Hey, we can't give you 3%, we're giving you 1.5," then it's your decision to charge the buyers that 1.5.
Correct. So
Okay, got it.
this contract right here would be signed once again before you even start showing houses, start talking about commissions with any sellers, anything like that. This is agreed upon from the very beginning. Okay, like I said, there's another form we'll get into in a bit, but this is before any talks about money with anybody else aside from your buyers. Okay. Then we have the protection period. The protection period is going to be pretty important as well. If left blank, it is 30 days. However, uh, what is the important part of this? When you're under contract, which is this document here, with a consumer or a buyer, you may find a property, you may show them a property uh, during that time, and they may not like it. Later on, you find out, or they end up going back to that property after your agreement has expired with them and they get under contract. This right here pretty much says if they were to do something like that uh, and get under contract, you are still uh, able to get paid for your services. So let me just read it. Consumer will compensate broker if left blank 30 days after termination date, consumer contracts to acquire any property which was called to consumer's attention by the broker or any other person or found by consumer during the term of this agreement. Period. So during the time that you guys had this agreement, in this case, we have 6 months. If within that 6 months you showed them a property, you sent them a property, you made them aware of a property, whatever the case may be, if within that time period, okay, that has taken place, you are still uh due that compensation. Where was I? Period. Consumer's obligation to pay broker's fee ceases upon the consumer's entering a good faith exclusive buyer brokerage agreement with another broker after the termination date. Okay, there we go. Another one. If they come into an agreement with another agent, another firm, and they sign that form, they no longer have to give you that compensation. Does that make sense?
Do you mean if they go like independently go to the house and do everything by
No,
themselves or what? Can you
no.
repeat? Okay.
Okay, so during your agreement with
Mhm.
them, if you were to show them houses, if you were to send them houses, make them aware of any property, right? And after that, let's say the December 5th, that's what we have on here, right?
Mhm.
Yes. December 5th. Let's say on January 20th, they went out and found a property, right? And they wanna, or they went back to that property that you showed them or sent them, and they want to get under contract with it. If they do go ahead and do that, right? Let's say, and this is the perfect example would be a builder. That's the more likely way that would happen because just like you have to get this form signed, everybody else has to get this form signed as far as agents go. But let's say they walk into this new construction community that you showed them or sent them before, and they get under contract with them. They talk to the salesperson over there, and they get under contract. You are able to get your compensation for that, right? However, if they were to go on January 20th and sign with John Doe Realty, right? And they say, we have an agreement now, no longer are you obligated or due that payment because now they have a new agreement with somebody else.
Got it.
But don't we have some type of protection that states they can't leave us without compensation, or is this something where when this agreement is expires and then they jump ship, then it's all I guess in good deed.
Say it again.
So isn't it where we have some type of protection? I think it's this same document that they sign, like, hey, you're gonna be with me for this amount of period. If you find a house, but they wanted to go work with another agent, you still get compensated.
Okay, so let's go here. Let's okay. So we're gonna focus on this form only today. I had a little bit more, but we're gonna focus only on here. So coming back up to the beginning, where was it? Right here. To start, we have the retainer. Okay. That retainer is, hey, up front, you agree to give me, let's say, for example, $500. We'll just put that in here. $500 to even start working with you. I'm going to start sending you homes. I'm going to show you properties. I'm going to uh, help you find inspectors, whatever the case may be. $500 up front, you don't get that back. That's that retainer fee, right? If you want to do that. If you don't want to, not a problem. Coming over here. So you had that agreement already, right? Remember, June 5th to December 5th of 2025. Coming over here into our compensation, right? Or sorry, our protection period, right? It's saying if anything I showed or sent to brought to the attention of the buyer, if anything like that were to happen, and after our December 5th deadline or our agreement ends, they were to get under contract. And like I said, the best example is going to be that new construction because they don't really need have an agent with them when they walk into that community. The sales representative will talk to them and do everything for them. If they were to do something like that, in that case, you are due a payment. If they did that on January 1st, if they did that on even December 21st or 6th, right? If that were to happen, you are due a payment. If after that December 5th date, so December 6th, they sign with a new agent, a new brokerage firm, right? You are no longer obligated or able to get that payment, period. Okay? This is only after that December 5th date. That means if during your time period, right, and during your agreement of June to December, they were to try to sign with somebody, or if they were to go to a property and somebody else try to do the compensation or the forms with them, whatever the case may be, that's a completely different story. Okay, that is completely different than the protection period post agreement. This is
Got it.
during your agreement, which means you are in full representation of that client. They would have to terminate that agreement with you in order to go and do that.
Got it. No problem. I don't know if you was talking about this or if this was a question brought up. Now, if you were to charge your client like before as a non-refundable, how would that work if it was to, I guess, like a how should I say it, like a direct deposit, or hey, you pay 500, but if we close, that 500 is going to go towards the total commission.
No.
Okay.
So the wording in here is saying this is unrelated to. So it says
Got
this
it. Got it.
retainer
Okay.
is in addition to the compensation earned.
All right, no problem. So in your mind, you'll just make that up in your mind. Like if it's 1,500 that you want to be charged, you just charge them 500 up front, and then at the end, 1,000 without the extra wording. Got it.
Ooh, no, I didn't understand that. I want to make sure we're on the same page. What, can you explain that again?
All right. So you know how if you go pay a diagnostic and then you decide to fix the car,
Yeah,
that
it's not like that. It is not
okay.
like that. The
Got
non the retainer is a fee that is charged completely separate from whether they close, don't close. If they, if you get paid from the seller, if they have to pay you an extra 0.5 later on, that's completely unrelated. Okay. So if your retainer is $1,500, that's $1,500 that you've received at the beginning. And later on, if your compensation is 3%, you still get that 3% on top of that. It's an addition to.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anybody else has questions?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that again? And I don't know what you guys are talking about the retaining, the
So,
retainer or front. I don't know. Can you
so
repeat the whole thing
yes.
you were saying?
So on the second page of the exclusive buyer brokerage agreement, there's a retainer. Okay. The retainer is a non-refundable fee that you could collect
Okay.
that will be pretty much given to you to start working with this client. Okay, to do your duties, whether it's show them houses, send them houses, uh, do the forms, or just representation in general. Okay. This fee is a non-refundable fee, and it is in addition to your compensation. That means if you were to decide, hey, I want to represent John Doe, and John Doe, you're going to charge him $500 to do whatever it is, right? To start. If they close on a house, don't close on a house, if they decide to, no longer be looking or whatever the case may be, that $500 doesn't go back to them. It stays in your pocket. You do whatever you want with it, right? If they decide to get under contract and you had an agreement, like over here I put 3%, and it's your agreement. If you have a 3% agreement, whether the seller gives 2.5, 3, 2, 1, you don't subtract that $500 from it. It is in addition to. So that $500 is just a retainer, non-refundable, no correlation to how much you're getting paid later on. Does that make sense?
Okay. It is something that happen often, or
Retainers are not something that you see too often. However, it exists. People do use it. And the more and more you, of course, have clients who are that you're representing, you might find yourself using it just because the bigger of an agent you are, the more clientele you have, the more you might feel your time is valuable, right? If you have 10, 15 clients that you're dealing with, you don't want to be going out with that client, probably all these clients every day, every week, and nothing comes out of it, or you're not compensated for it. So you might say, you know what, I'm gonna start charging a retainer. And that way, even if I don't get anything out of this, no closing out of it, I'm compensated for my time, my fuel, whatever the case may be.
okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. So then we have a termination. Okay. At a consumer's request, broker may agree to conditionally terminate this agreement. If the broker agrees to conditionally terminate this agreement, consumer must enter a written agreement to this effect and pay cancellation fee of X amount. Broker may void the condition of termination and consumer will pay the fee stated in compensation, less the cancellation fee if from the early termination date to the termination date plus protection period, if applicable, consumer contracts to acquire any property which prior to the earlier termination date was found by the consumer or called to the consumer's attention by broker of any other person. Long story, or to shorten that up, all it's saying is during the time of your representation, for a specific reason that is agreed upon, uh, you guys decide to no longer work together. and let's say it is due to something that the buyers do, due to, whatever the case that was agreed upon, you can charge a cancellation fee as long as it is in here and agreed upon from the beginning. Okay. And if, for example, you have this agreement, let's say it's $1,000, right? Hey, if you decide, we can no longer work together. Let's say you start going out with them and every house they look at is not good for them. Every dollar amount for, inspection is not good for them, whatever the case may be. Um, you guys agree you can no longer work together. If you have an agreement of $1,000 cancellation fee, they pay you that $1,000. Now, if after this agreement you guys canceled, you got your $1,000, and later on they got under contract with a property, we'll use the builder again. They went back to that community and got under contract with that community or in that uh, neighborhood. That $1,000 comes out of the amount of compensation you're owed. Make sense? So,
Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
okay. Okay. Dispute resolution that you guys agree on. You guys understand that you guys are going to try to come to an agreement on everything. You guys understand the mediation process, and any fees or attorneys that need to be involved. This is going to be at a cost to you guys. That's pretty much what this paragraph is saying. Then, of course, you have the actual relationship itself, transaction broker. Make sure you guys understand what that is. And like I said, even the client might want to know exactly what that means for them. It breaks it down. If you're a transaction broker agreement, broker will act as a transaction broker. Broker will deal honestly and fairly, will account for all funds, will use skill, care, and diligence in the transaction, will disclose all known facts that materially affect the value of the residential property, which are not readily observable to the buyer, will present all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner unless directed otherwise in writing, and will have limited confidentiality with buyer unless waived in writing. That is pretty much what that transaction broker relationship says you owe to the buyer. If there are any other terms, you could always add it. Any other term literally can mean anything else, right? So once again, just like at the beginning, you want to be specific about where you're representing this client. You also want to be specific about any additional terms. If you are going to have additional terms, word it that it makes sense, okay? You don't want to just say, uh, I'm going to help them find property or something like this, or you want to be specific, okay? Because this is a legally binding contract. Later on, they're going to go word for word exactly what was signed and agreed upon. So far, so good. Of course, everybody has to sign this document. Everybody agrees on it, dates, and so on and so forth. I'm gonna quickly go back here to our compensation agreement here. We have this agreement. Like I said, remember this because this is the agreement that we have up front before you start representing anybody, before you do anything. We're gonna go back. Say that again. Okay. Somebody. Okay. Let's go back to our training folder here. We're going to add a new form. Modification to the exclusive buyer brokerage agreement. Okay, so I'm going to click both of these here. Going to add both of them and start with this one. Okay, so this form here is a modification to that document we just filled out. We have an agreement. You're going to put exactly when you had this agreement, right? So we're going to check this. For example, we're going to say we started our agreement on June 5th. That would be 06, 2025. If I'm modifying my agreement, let's say I'm doing an extension of it, right? Then I would come over here and say, you know what? No longer is it December. Now it's going to be January. I need one extra month for whatever reason. Okay. You would have to go ahead and do this document. Do not assume, oh, it's nothing, or we're only 1 week out, oh, it's only 1 month. We don't need to update our agreement. Make sure you're on top of it when it comes to these documents. Make sure all your things are up to date, okay? Any modification, don't just assume we agreed over the phone, we agreed via text, we talked about it, that's a good person, that's my cousin, that's my best friend. None of that. Legally binding contract. Understand what that means. Very serious. Legally binding contract. So if you guys have any modification to it, make sure you fill it out, put it on paper, and everybody signs. So if we're extending the date, make sure you have this document filled out and the extension is done. If the compensation is changing, make sure that is done here as well. Okay. So right here, compensation to the broker. This is going to be you guys. If we already agreed on 3, right? And now we're increasing or decreasing it, make sure you do that. Why would you do that? Okay. If you had an agreement of 3% and the seller decided they're giving you 2.5%, that 0.5% legally binding contract says is owed to you by the buyer. Do you guys understand that? I need to hear.
Sin, senor. Sin, si, senor.
Okay. It's a legally binding contract. They owe you that 0.5%. If you feel that 2.5 is enough, the buyers, they don't need to pay me any more than that, or they don't have the funds for it, whatever the case may be, this form needs to be filled out and updated to show 2.5%. Okay? It has to show, it has to be updated to show that 2.5%. That way, they owe you nothing legally. Okay. Protection period. Okay. If we're updating this form and we need to update our protection period as well, we need to do it here. If we're updating our cancellation fee, think about everything we just went over is pretty much in here, but instead of all the explanations, they're just saying you can modify it, you can modify it, you can modify it. So cancellation fee, if we need to update it, you're doing that here. What is it? Conditional termination agreement, update it here.
Uh,
If
do,
you guys,
do you have to? This is the same form. You just update it in the same form.
this is not the same form.
This
This
is
form
not
is
the same
called
form. Oh,
modification.
modification. Okay,
Yes. If
modification.
you guys are no longer working together, remember I said that cancellation, you guys decide for whatever reason you guys are no longer working together.
Mm-hmm.
This form as well has a box right here that says buyer and consumer hereby agree to unconditionally terminate the agreement. So we just take everything out, whatever the case may be. If you guys had a fee and you guys want to update that and it's different from the amount that was there before, then you would update it. But if the original amount is already, or the original contract already says that, um, you have a cancellation fee, like we put $1,000, for example, then you don't need to update it. All you're gonna do is come over here and say, hey, we have an agreement to cancel this. We agreed to terminate this agreement. You get paid, everybody signed, and that's it. We're done. You guys understand that? So any
Yes.
modification to that buyer brokerage agreement needs to be put in writing on this document here. Did you guys see the name? Modification to exclusive buyer brokerage agreement / showing agreement.
Yes.
You guys saw where I went to get it. It's in the same spot pretty much. So I'm going to open the same folder that I already created. It's called training.
Mm-hmm.
Click form. We added it. Modification to the exclusive buyer brokerage agreement. Okay. So you would click it, add it, and go ahead and fill it out. There's also a modification to the compensation agreement. Okay. So you and the buyer, you and the seller have agreed on an amount on the compensation. If you guys need to modify that as well, then you would come in here and modify it as well. Okay. So just like you would modify it if you'd see that you had an agreement of 3% with the buyers, the sellers are giving you 2.5, and you for some reason say that's enough, or the buyers don't have the money, you update it to 2.5. Same thing goes here. If you and the buyer, you and the seller agreed on 2%, 3%, and later on it changes, you got to come in here and agree on it again, update it, have everybody sign. It's not just, oh, we talked about it and we understand it went from 3 to 2.5. We understand it went from 2 to 3. No, it has to be on paper in writing and signed and agreed upon. Any questions there? No. Okay. Um, just for the purpose of making sure it's not too much information, I'm gonna leave it at this. There are more forms, and we will get into those in the next training and where to find them. But those are, wanted to start off that exclusive buyer brokerage agreement. Like I said, when you get a chance, go in, read it, understand it, so that when you have a client that has questions on it, you are able to explain it to them. Um, if there's any modifications that need to be done, you understand where to go to do that modification. You understand your duties, you understand their duties, and so on and so forth. If there's no other questions, that'll be all for today. Uh, the video is going to be uploaded. I'm going to actually show you guys where you guys will be able to find it.